If you've followed the world's transformations over the past few decades, the name Vision 2030 is probably not unfamiliar. It is an ambitious blueprint aimed at pivoting the economy of an oil-rich kingdom toward becoming a global hub, a modern economic empire rivaling the appeal of leading cities in the United States and Europe. Renderings of vertical cities and ultra-luxury resort islands have appeared across financial media, promising a bright and powerful post-oil era. However, after nearly a decade of pouring capital into massive construction sites, reality seems to be delivering some harsh feedback. Amid skyrocketing construction costs, rising public debt, and unpredictable fluctuations in global oil prices, cracks are beginning to show beneath the glossy surface of these mega-projects. Renowned construction firms and international contractors are facing unprecedented logistical and financial challenges as they attempt to realize ideas that sometimes defy the laws of nature. The question now is no longer how abundant are the resources, but rather how long can the economy sustain the pressure? And in this high-risk game, which project is holding the most dangerous red card, likely to be sidelined when national finances must prioritize more practical goals? Let's take a look at these 7 megaprojects. If you've ever thought that drawings of a perfectly straight, mirror-clad city stretching hundreds of miles through the desert look like something out of a low-budget Hollywood sci-fi film, your instinct may have been right. The Line Project, the centerpiece of the neo-megacity, seems to be proving that no matter how much black gold you have, fundamental physical and economic laws cannot be bought. We once heard about a 105-mile-long city designed for 1.5 million people. But look at the latest figures. The projected population has evaporated by more than 80%, leaving fewer than 300,000 residents. Even the planned length to be completed by 2030 has been drastically reduced from 105 miles to just 1.5 miles. To put that into perspective, that distance is shorter than a casual loop around Central Park in New York. Would you be willing to invest billions of dollars just to build a mirror-clad corridor in the middle of nowhere? It seems that the gap between glossy marketing and construction reality is wider than the flight range of a Boeing 777. Building on sand is already difficult. Building with a shrinking wallet is even harder. To maintain excavation at a rate of 1.3 million cubic yards per week, equivalent to filling 400 Olympic swimming pools, Saudi Arabia has had to mobilize massive amounts of heavy machinery from companies like Caterpillar and Komatsu. But the problem is, those machines don't run on promises. The strain on this money-burning machine is becoming clear as oil. The kingdom's financial lifeblood fails to deliver the expected strength. With oil prices rarely reaching the $80.90 per barrel range needed to balance the budget, the Public Investment Fund appears to be feeling the heat from mounting deficits. Knocking on international markets to borrow money in order to sustain a futuristic dream is likely not the kind of strategy seasoned Wall Street investors would endorse over their morning coffee. The concern goes beyond numbers. When you see top minds and world-class architects quietly packing up and leaving the project, it raises the question of what cracks they may have seen that others have not. Perhaps the immense pressure of turning unrealistic designs into reality has exceeded even the limits of the most optimistic individuals. And then, consider the post-construction nightmare, a towering mirror-clad structure standing alone amid harsh desert sandstorms. The cost of keeping millions of square miles of glass polished, rather than letting it turn into giant sheets of sandpaper from constant abrasion, poses an operational challenge that could bring an entire national budget to its knees before the ribbon is even cut. It seems this dream is consuming far more than it can realistically promise to deliver. After nearly 8 years of standing under the scorching Gulf sun like a giant skeleton, an aftermath of the shocking political purge at the Ritz-Carlton in 2017, Jeddah Tower now seems to be trying to shake off the dust and rise again. It appears that resolving contract disputes and restructuring finances in early 2025 has injected a shot of adrenaline into this mega construction site. As of May 2026, the tower seems to have surpassed the 100 floor mark, equivalent to a height of over 1,300 feet. With a construction pace of 3-4 days per floor, one might be reminded of the efficiency of Ford's assembly lines in their golden era. The goal of completion by 2028 to surpass Burj Khalifa sounds heroic, but in construction, a target is sometimes just another word for hope. Laying the foundation for a tower over 3,280 feet tall back in 2010 was already an outrageous ambition, but the decision to restart it in 2026 feels like a financial gamble that would make even the sharpest analysts at Goldman Sachs raise an uneasy eyebrow. A decade of stagnation has not only coated the site in thick layers of desert dust, but also dragged in a storm of inflation that has distorted all original estimates. Prices for specialty steel, reinforced concrete, and architectural glass have skyrocketed compared to 15 years ago, turning the original budget into little more than scrap paper. On top of that, leaving the steel structure exposed for 7 consecutive years under intense heat and salty Gulf winds has created massive sunk costs. Maintenance, rust removal, and reassessing the structural integrity of the foundation after years of static load under harsh conditions form a costly engineering problem that no contractor likely had the courage to include in the original execution report. Looking at the total investment for the entire Jeddah economic city reaching $20 billion, one cannot help but question the realism of its returns. As Wall Street tightens its discipline on risk standards, pouring money into thousands of luxury apartments and offices in an oasis that has yet to prove strong financial appeal, like Jeddah seems more like a vanity gamble than a rational investment decision. It appears that the price of holding a world record is becoming too expensive, even for the seemingly bottomless pockets of Arab royalty. And just as Jeddah Tower begins to move again, new challengers have emerged. Dubai is plotting with the Burj Azizi project, and in the capital Riyadh, there is talk of a tower reaching up to 1.2 miles high. Meanwhile, operating a structure nearly as tall as a mountain presents a serious energy challenge. Its system of 59 high-speed elevators and the Enerdo to pump clean water thousands of feet upward consume enough electricity to power an entire small town. In an era that worships sustainability, the operating expenses of this giant could become the final blow to investor profits. Unlike the Burj Khalifa, which is surrounded by the bustling ecosystem of downtown Dubai, Jeddah Tower currently looks like a solitary pillar standing in the middle of an unfinished construction site. Building a tower seems easier than building an economic ecosystem around it. This project appears to be continuing largely out of pride and to preserve the integrity of the Vision 2030 plan, rather than because of actual profit figures on paper. There is a high chance the tower will be completed due to the leadership's iron determination, but don't be too surprised if it becomes a costly monument, a dazzling architectural wonder lacking the presence of global elites. With each side measuring about 1,312 feet, Mukaab is not just a building. It is designed to become a world within a world. Imagine standing in the heart of Riyadh while being surrounded by a virtual rainforest or a deep ocean, enabled by unprecedented immersive technology. This project is expected to be the heart of the new Murabba district, providing millions of square feet of commercial space. But the gap between creating a dazzling 3D rendering on an Apple computer and pouring actual concrete is enormous. Promises of the world's most modern urban center sound impressive, but often the brightest promises are the hardest to fulfill. Perhaps the biggest obstacle to Mukaab's ambition does not lie in physical materials, but in technologies that still exist largely on paper. To deliver a fully immersive experience with cinematic, three-dimensional simulated environments, the project requires a holographic display system and a massive network of LED screens covering the entire interior surface area of the cube, potentially reaching millions of square feet. When illusion meets reality, serious questions begin to emerge. Experts do not seem optimistic about maintaining sharp resolution and consistent lighting across a space, with a volume equivalent to 20 Empire State Building structures. One has to wonder whether residents will truly be immersed in a magical experience, or instead face a chaotic array of malfunctioning pixels on a scale never before seen in human history. And that's not all. Mukaab is also a genuine nightmare in terms of infrastructure, engineering, and thermodynamics. Cooling a sealed cube with sides measuring 1,312 feet, expected to house millions of people and tens of thousands of heat-emitting electronic devices under Saudi Arabia's scorching temperatures, often exceeding 110 degrees Fahrenheit, is a complex problem that even the most advanced industrial HVAC systems would approach with caution. In a completely windowless structure with such dense population and equipment, critical issues like air circulation and fire safety standards remain major unanswered questions, pushing the limits of modern engineering. It seems that trying to trap a virtual paradise inside a sealed box is becoming a high-risk gamble against the uncompromising laws of physics. As the Saudi government tightens its budget to prioritize events like Expo 2030 and the FIFA World Cup 2034, showcase projects like Mukaab could easily fall onto the suspension list. Although the kingdom is making strong efforts to attract foreign direct investment, such capital has not shown strong enthusiasm for risky non-oil projects. Western investors would likely prefer to put money into tangible assets rather than a multi-billion-dollar digital experience. Moreover, its geometric design has unintentionally sparked cultural controversy, creating an additional psychological barrier for potential investors. If you've ever dreamed of a vacation in the Maldives but wanted it to be in the Arabian desert, then Red Sea Global is the answer. Covering more than 10,800 square miles, roughly the size of the entire state of Hawaii, this project goes far beyond building hotels. They are attempting to reshape 92 pristine islands and extinct volcanoes into a playground for the ultra-wealthy. But be careful what you wish for, because this paradise seems to be burning cash faster than a supercar racing on the track at Daytona International Speedway. To serve the goal of 50 hotels and 8,000 luxury rooms, Saudi Arabia has done something only those with oil wells might dare to imagine: building a dedicated international airport solely for tourists. You won't be riding ordinary buses. Instead, you may be transported by a fleet of ultra-green, high-end hydrogen-powered seaplanes. And to keep everything running, they are installing a massive battery energy storage system, marketed as the largest in the world. It sounds like the perfect pitch to attract investors from Silicon Valley, but the reality might make taxpayers uneasy. There's one truth that anyone who has ever run a business or even a farm in Texas understands. Logistics is everything. Transporting every gram of premium steak, every liter of fresh water, and daily necessities from the mainland to remote islands by seaplane and electric transport is not a cheap equation. Operating costs are rising like an aircraft taking off with no clear landing point. On top of that, running the entire system on solar power in a corrosive saltwater environment with temperatures frequently exceeding 110 degrees Fahrenheit is a challenge that even Tesla solar panels would approach with caution. Maintenance and replacement costs for this system seem to have been overlooked in the overly optimistic early plans. Although some resorts, such as Six Senses Southern Dunes, have opened, occupancy rates do not yet appear sufficient to offset the massive $17 billion investment of Phase 1. You can build a castle, but no one can guarantee that the ultra-wealthy will abandon the Caribbean for a destination where cultural barriers remain significant. It is perhaps not surprising that insiders cited by Reuters have begun reporting that major Phase 2 contracts are being postponed indefinitely. Under pressure to allocate capital toward Expo 2030 inches, Riyadh, the government appears to be hitting the brakes and reassessing whether it is literally pouring money into the sea. Instead of completing all 50 hotels as originally envisioned, the project shows signs of scaling back, focusing on finishing what has already been started to avoid a public relations disaster. A classic cut-loss strategy, when ambitions exceed the realistic capacity of a national budget. Red Sea Global now faces the risk of becoming a classic white elephant of the modern era, an expensive, flashy asset that fails to generate returns. The lack of private investment from major U.S. and European corporations reflects the caution of the international financial community toward an unproven business model in this region. Located at elevations of up to 8,500 feet above sea level, where temperatures can drop below freezing in winter, Trojena is expected to become the region's first outdoor ski resort. Plans envision a massive artificial lake perched atop the mountains and ultra-modern vertical villages. Saudi Arabia even stunned the global sports community by winning the bid to host the Asian Winter Games 2029. Convincing people that you can ski in the desert may be just as difficult as convincing shareholders that this is a profitable long-term investment. You know, nature has very strict rules. To maintain ski slopes under intense sunlight and extremely low desert humidity, Trojena appears to be waging war against the sun itself. According to observers' concerns, producing enough artificial snow and filling that massive lake would require an enormous amount of fresh water. And since deserts lack rainfall, the only solution is desalinating seawater and pumping it uphill over 1.5 miles through pipelines stretching dozens of miles. The energy cost alone could power an entire small city in the United States. Trying to sustain temperate vegetation in the middle of dry limestone mountains is a challenge that would give even top engineers at John Deere a headache. Can an artificial ecosystem survive long-term, or will it wither the moment the cooling systems fail? As of mid-2026, reports from the field appear to be sending less than optimistic signals. Construction on rugged high-altitude terrain is far more complex than building on flat ground. Many sources indicate that excavation volumes and foundational infrastructure remain in a concerning state. With pressure to complete in time for the 2029 event, the initial projected budget, already part of the $500 billion NEOM, appears to be severely strained by inflation in high-tech equipment and surging labor costs. You can buy time with money, but sometimes the price is simply too high even for an oil-rich kingdom. If you've ever taken your family to Walt Disney World in Florida and felt overwhelmed by its scale, then imagine an entertainment complex twice that size, about 142 square miles, sitting squarely among the limestone cliffs of the Arabian Desert. That is Qiddiya, a place promised to become the capital of entertainment, sports, and the arts of the world. Qiddiya's ambition could easily make thrill seekers in the U.S. restless. You may see Six Flags Qiddiya featuring the Falcon's Flight roller coaster, advertised as the fastest and tallest in the world. And it doesn't stop there. A FIA Grade 1 Formula 1 circuit is planned to cut through dramatic cliffs, promising a visual experience never before seen in motorsports history. They even plan to build an entire theme park based on a famous Japanese animation brand to attract younger audiences. It sounds like a perfect fusion of Western technology and Eastern ambition, but will the construction wheels move as fast as the race cars? According to the original plan, Qiddiya was supposed to host a Grand Prix as early as 2021. Yet as of May 2026, drivers are still racing at the temporary circuit in Jeddah. Maintaining hosting rights while infrastructure in Qiddiya remains an active construction site is costing the Public Investment Fund hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Contractors appear to be facing cash flow nightmares as designs are continuously revised to meet futuristic technical demands. In business, time is money, and here, time is slipping away across vast, unfinished stretches of sand. Unlike remote ghost projects deep in the desert like NEOM, Qiddiya has a far more practical advantage. It sits right next to Riyadh, a capital with over 7 million residents. This represents a strong domestic market of young consumers willing to spend heavily on entertainment, a more realistic financial foundation for recovering investment. However, international observers cannot ignore the concept of sports washing. Questions arise as to whether pouring billions into high-profile boxing events and Grand F1 circuits is more about polishing international image than purely economic goals. This creates a psychological barrier for major U.S. brands considering long-term partnerships or offices here. The spread of resources across too many components at once, from cliffside stadiums to anime parks, sometimes makes the project look like an oversized suit for a body that hasn't grown into it yet. Finally, there is Oxagon, a massive octagonal industrial city floating on the Red Sea. Plans envision a city half on land and half anchored on water, located right at the entrance to the Suez Canal. Did you know that about 13% of global trade flows through this route every day? It's a strategic location that would catch the attention of logistics giants like FedEx or UPS. The goal here is enormous: a fully automated manufacturing hub powered entirely by green hydrogen, supplied by a massive plant in partnership with Air Products. It sounds like a paradise for clean energy investors, but remember, the sea has never been easy to tame. You don't need to be a mechanical engineer to understand that salt water and sensitive electronics are not exactly best friends. Keeping a heavy industrial city stable on floating modules against Red Sea waves and tides is a serious challenge. Is this technology mature enough, or is it just an expensive, multi-billion-dollar experiment? Moreover, maintaining precision robots and automated production lines in a highly corrosive environment could drive operating costs, OPEX, to unimaginable levels. Experts at Maritime Executive may have a point when asking, why build on water when vast desert land remains far more stable? Port business is not built overnight. Oxagon is entering a field where established hubs like Jebel Ali in Dubai or Salalah in Oman have dominated for decades, with fully developed inland connections and stable customs policies. Major shipping companies such as Maersk or MSC are highly pragmatic. They prioritize safety and efficiency over futuristic designs. On top of that, ongoing security instability in the Red Sea region in recent years casts a shadow over Oxagon's prospects. Would manufacturers really risk placing their home base in a location where maritime insurers remain on high alert? In reality, compared to the flashy megaprojects in Riyadh or the vertical city, the Line, Oxagon appears to offer less immediate political and media value. This raises doubts that it could quietly face budget cuts or delays as funds are redirected toward more visible projects. Ultimately, Oxagon is a bold idea, but it seems to lack the necessary practicality in an intensely competitive environment. If it cannot prove cost and security advantages, this octagonal structure may end up as a modest green hydrogen production hub rather than the industrial capital it promises to be. After taking a full tour around Saudi Arabia's proud mega construction sites, we can probably all sense one obvious truth. Money can build skyscrapers, but it cannot buy out the unforgiving laws of economics and physics. These megaprojects are not just steel and concrete structures. They are the embodiment of a fierce collision between grand personal ambition and the harsh realities of global financial markets. Looking at the bigger picture, many analysts are beginning to place bets on which name will be the first to wave the white flag. It's not too hard to point to: the Line with its high-risk linear design, or Mukaab with projection technologies that still largely exist on paper. Operational impracticality and mounting budget pressure seem to be pushing these dreams into a corner. What about you? Do you believe the persistence of national finances or the cold laws of the market will ultimately shape the future of this region? Will we witness a true wonder or a lesson in resource misallocation? Share your perspective. I'd really like to know what someone with experience like yours thinks about this high-stakes gamble. Note: this isn't some crystal ball attempt to predict the exact date of a meltdown. Think of it instead as a much-needed reality check on the systemic geopolitical risks that those glossy investment brochures conveniently choose to ignore. Thanks for watching till the end, and we'll catch you in the next video.